the show that teaches you everything school didn't teach you about job search and career growth. And I'm so excited to have you all here attending live with me. Shout out to all our regulars and welcome to all our new folks. So today we're going to be talking about interviews, specifically post-crisis, post-COVID interviews, and the questions that you need to be prepared to answer. And not just that these are, say, new questions per se that you've never seen before, but the fact that the way you go about answering some particular questions needs to be adjusted quite a bit in order for you to stand out. And so I'm very excited to be talking to you about all of that. Now, look, we have so many amazing resources when it comes to interview prep at Work It Daily, including the one that we're sharing with you today. It's a free tool that you can download that gives you the most common behavioral questions you're going to be asked in job interviews. And as you can imagine, these are questions that you're going to get asked no matter what the economy is like, no matter what's going on in the world. And, you know, you have to be a good interviewer. Interviewing is a skill. It's not something they teach us in school. It's not something we naturally develop, but there is a natural expectation these days, thanks to the internet and all the resources available. Recruiters and hiring managers expect you to be good at interviewing. So if you're not good at interviewing, or you're not sure if you're good at interviewing, a great first step would be to download this free PDF and ask yourself, how good am I at answering these questions? Because it is so hard to get an interview. You don't want to blow it and just kind of wing it in that actual session. You really want to be able to nail your questions down. So check out that free resource. And now, of course, I want to get down to the business of talking about these questions. Especially, you're going to see today 5 specific questions that I want you to spend more time than usual on getting right. And why you need to spend more time on those is pretty key. So the first thing that I want you to understand is that companies will be looking for people on the right side of career grief. So what is career grief? Well, if you've ever studied psychology like me, you know that there's this thing called Kubler-Ross's stages of grief. And any type of grief you go through follows usually those processes, and it can take us a while to get through them. We can go in and out of the 5 stages. Just to recap for you, they are denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. And they often say that it kind of goes like this, right? So you've got denial, and then it starts to go down into anger, and then you've got bargaining and depression way here in the bottom. And then when you come out on the other side of it, you come back up to acceptance. So what I'm saying here is that when you go in these interviews, you are really going to need to authentically and sincerely convey the fact that you have accepted the new reality and that you are ready to move forward. If you have any kind of desperation, any depression, any anxiety, any anger, that is going to show through. And you're saying, well, JT, how can I not? Look what's going on in the world. How does somebody not have these things? Well, you have to really work through your mindset, and you have to get to a place where you are ready to go forward and you see the opportunities that lie ahead of us. And with that means you will be in the stage of acceptance. It is what it is. We can't change what's happened. We can change how we react to the situation and how we move forward. And so it's very important that if you aren't there yet, you're working with somebody, whether it's a career counselor, the folks at Work It Daily, you've got somebody else in your life, maybe a trusted mentor. Somebody needs to be working through your anxiety around all of this so that you can get to a place of acceptance, because acceptance is where this begins. Now, once you know that you're on the side of acceptance, then you have to start thinking about something called professional presence. And I have been talking about this a lot in recent episodes of this show, because professional presence is how people see, hear, and understand you. It's how they interpret you as a professional. And it's interesting, there's been an incredible amount of studies done on this. And we know that somebody sizes you up, right? Sizes up your professional presence based on 3 things. First one is called gravitas, and that's just a fancy word for saying your practical knowledge, your practical wisdom, your depth of knowledge on a subject. You've heard us on this show talk a lot about your need to be a specialist, and that's because if you can prove you're a specialist in something, studies show people automatically trust you more and assume that you're probably good at a lot of different things because you got so good at this one thing. So you don't want to consider yourself a jack or Jill of all trades. You want to identify your gravitas or your specialty and be able to convey that depth of knowledge. And that's about 35% of the total package when they're evaluating you. Another 14% of that is your appearance. And there's a really famous quote. I say it all the time because I just love her. Doris Day, she was a very famous actress, used to say, people hear what they see. people hear what they see. So that has to do with image, how you dress, your facial expressions, your hand gestures, body language, all those sorts of things as part of your appearance. And that does matter. That's about 14% of the equation. So we've got 35% is gravitas, 14% is appearance, which leaves 51% for the final category. And that, my friends, is your character, otherwise known as your communication style, how you communicate with the world, how you present information. Now, this has to do with like your voice tone and your word choice and overall what you emit, right? So we talk about that idea of being on the acceptance side. Well, you're not going to show a lot of professional presence if you're distracted, if you're nervous, if you have anxiety, if you're angry. These are not things that give off the appearance of somebody who is really collected and in acceptance mode and ready to move forward. And so today I want to talk about that and what needs to go into your professional presence post-crisis in order to be attractive to employers. This is what you're going to have to convey. Vision, meaning seeing opportunities in the future. Practical knowledge, meaning, hey, I've taken everything I've learned and figured out how to apply it and use it to my advantage. Composure, right? So we're not, all over the board at coming across kind of flaky, flighty, nervous. Humility, having an incredible showing of appreciation and understanding of our gratitude and how lucky we are and, that we're not better than someone else, especially when it comes to intellectual humility, being smart, but not trying to show that you're the smartest person in the room. Composure, similar to, I already said composure. Confidence. Confidence is not being cocky. It's just being sure of yourself. Not a lot of ums and ahs and stammering and pauses, but, being able to talk in a rhythm that says, hey, I know my stuff and I'm able to say it in a very confident tone and manner, so to speak. And then lastly, showing concern, right? Understanding and having compassion for others. Again, that gratitude factor and recognizing, everything that's happened and not just being focused on ourselves, but actually externally being focused on others. So when you start to go out and you interview, you're going to get asked questions. And when you can convey these things through your answers, you are going to improve the chances that you get chosen for the job because you are going to be giving off the persona, the professional presence that's going to give employers the confidence, the trust to hire you. And so think about it. If you can get good at this, you're going to beat out a lot of different people. And that's pretty important right now because, first of all, postings online are going to go away. We're going to go into something called the hidden job market when this is over. And that's because companies can't post these jobs publicly anymore. It's funny, I was talking about this on a session this morning with our Work It Daily members. I said, in the 1990s, the recession that went on then, the real estate crisis that happened, it was interesting. Companies, we didn't have technology. We weren't job posting. So you didn't really notice any anomalies there when people were looking for work. Fast forward to 2008, when we had become largely tech savvy, where all these companies were now where you posted your jobs for free, right? That's the first time, really 2008, we had this crisis. Companies went to go post their jobs and, normally they'd get 50 or 100 applicants online. And within an hour, they'd have 1,000. And within 24 hours, they'd have 10,000. And they physically couldn't handle what to do with those. So fast forward to today, and all of these employers know that when they finally have a job available, they are not going to post it on these public sites because they can't possibly deal with the amount of online applications they're going to get. What they're going to do is very quietly post it on their own careers pages because the people that have been following them and are passionate about them and truly want to work for them will be going to those pages directly. And then they're going to say to their peers in the office, hey, do you know anyone? There's a reason 85% of jobs are gotten via referral, especially in a hidden job market, which is coming next. And so you want to be able to connect with people in companies that you're interested in so that when you see the jobs posted, one night you wake up in the morning and it's there, before anybody else figures it out, you're able to tap your network and say, oh, I see you posted a job. Would you be able to introduce me to the hiring manager? Or, here's my cover letter and resume, et cetera. So this is the hidden job market that's coming. We'll be talking a lot more about that in future episodes. But my point being is if you're lucky enough to then finally get a job interview in a crazy competitive market, you are going to want to stand out by conveying vision, practical knowledge, composure, humility, confidence, and concern. And that will come through in how you answer the next 5 questions. So let's talk about that. They're going to assess your answers to these questions. And these just aren't any questions. By now, you should have figured out that they are behavioral questions. For those of you that don't know what those are, behavioral questions are open-ended questions that an employer asks you that require you to give more than a 1 or 2 word answer. Essentially, they have you tell a story. And the reason they have you do that is it's a way to get inside your head and listen to your personality and listen to your experience, listen to all those things. If I go back, right? If I go back to those previous things that I showed there, when you're giving, let's just look at this, when you're giving a long answer to some of these questions, what's going to come through is whether or not you have vision. Do you have practical knowledge? Are you acting composed? Do you have humility? Do you at the same time have confidence? And do you have concern? So these questions are very, very telling, and your answers to them become super important. So let's talk about the first question they're going to ask you. Shouldn't surprise you. Why are you looking for a new job? For many people, it's going to be because of the fact that they were laid off due to the crisis, right? That's a big deal. If you were laid off due to the crisis, it's a pretty straightforward answer. You might say, well, actually, it's unfortunate, but my company was one that suffered from the COVID-19 crisis, and they ended up laying off, 600 employees, and I was one of them, right? So now I'm looking for a new opportunity. That might be some, but some of you might be looking to get out because you're at a company now and you were one of the few that survived, and they said, well, here's a 50% pay cut and do 3 times as much work. And you're completely stressed out because that's not what you agreed to, but you took it because, hey, you needed a job and now you want to find something better. So how are you going to answer that one? How are you going to convey all those things we talked about? So you're going to need to say something more along the lines of, wow, that's a really great question. And it's not an easy one to answer because I am at my current employer, but unfortunately, due to COVID-19, they had massive changes. They did a lot of layoffs. Yes, I was lucky enough to keep my job, but with that came 3 times the amount of work and a pay cut. And, while I've been plugging away at that job, it's not really how I see myself long term. And I felt I owed it to myself to go out there and see if there might be something that's a better match for me in terms of what I'm looking to do going forward. And that's why I'm looking for a new opportunity. So what you're doing is pivoting it towards, what? I felt like I needed to take control of my future. And so I wanted to go out and see if I could find something that was better aligned with what I'm looking for. Now, keep in mind, whatever you say in this answer is going to set them up to ask you additional questions like, well, where do you see yourself? And where's the job falling short? And what are you expecting? So you always want to map out in your head your answer in terms of what additional questions it's going to prompt the person to ask, right? Now, there's a third option here. Some people before COVID even hit lost their jobs or were between jobs. So they might say, why are you looking for a new job? And you could say, well, I'm between jobs right now. And, unfortunately, due to the COVID crisis, it's kind of extended the time that I've been between jobs. And I'm really anxious to be getting back and looking for something, and being employed full time. I miss it. And I really want to be leveraging my skills and my abilities. So again, you've got to think about that because they've got a resume in front of them. And if they see that you were unemployed longer than the time in COVID, your answer is probably going to need to be a little bit different. Keep in mind that they're assessing you based on what they see. So you've got to be prepared to answer the tough questions in a way that shows confidence, right? Vision, all the things that I've talked about, that really positive vibe balanced with humility. And so your question needs to be very specific. If you answer this question too vaguely or too general, they're not going to believe you. That tends to mean, hey, we think this person has something to hide. And so they start asking additional questions. Well, why did you leave? Was it your decision or their decision? Were you fired? You can go down an ugly path. And so it's, when we're coaching people inside Work It Daily, we push back really hard on the interview prep. In fact, we have an entire separate, besides our interview prep course, we have an entire separate course called Fired to Hired that focuses on interview prep when you've been laid off or let go, because they will ask you these follow-up questions. There is a stigma with being fired. There's a stigma with being laid off. That is, why were you laid off and somebody else wasn't? We know that to be true. That's the reality. So you've got to ask yourself, what am I going to say that's balanced and fair and honest, but isn't going to raise a lot of red flags and get them to start ask a lot of follow-up questions. And so if you're not comfortable with your answers, folks, again, this goes back to that phase of acceptance of where you're at and being able to answer these questions calmly and without being defensive, then you need to get some extra help with this for sure. All right, now once you move on, next question they're going to ask is, why are you interested in our job or company? Remember, just a few short months ago, it was a job seekers market. Job seekers were in demand and they were being very choosy about where they worked and why. Now it's completely flipped over. At the time of recording of this audio segment, we have over 30 million people who have filed for unemployment in less than 6 weeks in the US. People, depending on what part of the country you're in, they're saying that unemployment is anywhere from 25 to 45% by region. That's really, really high. So you need to say something very specific that gets the attention of the employer when they ask you, why are you interested in this job or company? Because everybody's interested in this job or company, right? They're saying, hey, of course I want a job. I'm unemployed. You can't say that. That can't be your reason. That's everybody's reason. You have to do your due diligence and really make the case as to why you would be intrinsically motivated to do this job. So what is intrinsic motivation? It's just a fancy word for internal motivation. It's the motivation to get up out of bed every day and want to go to this job. It's the thing that you nerd out on about this work that makes you excited and giddy and constantly wanting to learn more and do more and be better. And so there's really two ways to look at it when you're looking at a job opportunity and company. One, it can be that you nerd out on what they do. So maybe you are a proud user and ambassador of their product or service and can talk incessantly about why it's so awesome. It's better, faster, cheaper, stronger, smarter, whatever. Or two, you completely nerd out and love the type of work you'd be doing, and it fascinates you and it drives you. You love being an accountant, a digital marketer, a receptionist, an analyst, whatever it is. So either one of those scenarios, either one of those internal motivations for work, nerding out on what the company does or what the work would be, comes with a story. And so for the behavioral question, you need to tell the story of how you got this kind of passion, where it comes from. When did you realize that this company, what they do is so amazing and worthy of your trust and respect? Or when did you realize that it was just your calling to do this kind of work and how important it was and why you loved doing it? These are the things that you need to share when you answer this question. You don't need to state the obvious. They know you want a paycheck. They know you want to be employed. So does everybody else. You've got to take it a step further and talk about your actual feelings and connection to the organization so that they know, okay, this is somebody that when the work gets hard is still going to show up every day. So moving on to number 3, why should we choose you for this role? Now, this is a big one, folks, because you could go out and talk to other career coaches who tell you to go the whole bravado route. Like, you got to show your confidence here. You've got to tell them why you're the best for the role. And I'm going to tell you, please don't do that. As somebody who works with a lot of recruiters and hiring managers, and especially as somebody who's coached people through recessions like the last one, when you come out on the other side of a crisis like this, companies are looking for people with humility. There's a lot of people out on the streets looking for work. And so when they ask you, why should we choose you for this role? If you answer with something cocky like, because I'm the best, I don't want you working for us. That's a disrespectful answer, plain and simple. What I want you to say is, that's a great question, because right now there's a lot of qualified candidates out there that are just as qualified as me. Show some humility, right? Show some humility. But once you say that, what you can say is, I'm definitely not special, but I do believe that I have a unique set of qualifications and what put together make me uniquely qualified for this role that I think would make me a good fit for this role. So let me walk you through those qualities and why I think together they would be a good fit. So once again, folks, it's about doing your homework and tying yourself in a very detailed fashion to the job and to the employer. So in this particular case, I might frame out the answer with something like, that's a great question, because there's a lot of really capable people out there. I'm sure you have a lot of people interviewing for this job right now that are just as qualified as me, probably more qualified. That said, I believe that I have 3 qualities in particular that, if I put them together, are going to make me uniquely qualified for this role to really solve problems for you and alleviate pain and, give you the best return on your investment. Really make sure that I am exceeding your expectations and earning my keep. Let me walk you through what I think those 3 things are and why. And then you would take them through them. So again, you're going to need some advanced thought on this. But in doing so, what you're showing is, hey, I've thought this through. And I'm not saying I'm the greatest thing ever, but here's my honest answer based on the thought that I gave. This is really showing emotional intelligence as well as intellectual humility, both that are very, very attractive in a post-crisis situation. So you got to do your homework on this, folks, and you got to frame it out correctly. Moving on to number 4, tell me about a time you made a big mistake on the job. Okay, so this is an important one. I want to know that you know when you've made a mistake. If you say, well, I really can't think of any, you're out. You know you've made a mistake. We've all made mistakes on the job. You have to have enough, again, professional presence, intellectual humility, emotional intelligence, wisdom, whatever you want to call it. You have to have enough of it to know that you are not perfect and that you are comfortable with being vulnerable enough to say, yes, I've made mistakes. Here they are. But as we teach everyone inside Work It Daily, if you answer this question using the experience, learn, and grow model, you're going to make sure that this story has a happy ending, because that's really what you're supposed to tell here, a story about a time where you really screwed up. So you want to walk them through and say, here's what happened. Then you want to take ownership and accountability. Here's where I went wrong. Here's a mistake I made. And this can really, I don't know, for lack of a better word, freak people out the first time they do this. They say, I don't like talking about myself, that I made a mistake and I did something wrong. But you made the best decision you could at the time. It's not like you knowingly were making that mistake at the time. It's just that later on you had more information or there were different outcomes that made you realize it wasn't the right choice. So make peace with that. Right? That's what I mean about acceptance. Say, yeah, there was this time where this happened and I took these steps, and then all of a sudden I found out that I took the wrong steps and this is what happened as a result. And, it was a really big mess up. That's what I experienced. Here's what I learned. I learned I shouldn't have done it the way. This is what I should have done instead. And this is how I solved the problem. And I really grew from it. And now when I work for an organization like yours, I'll know to never do that. And I've also put several things in place to make sure that it doesn't happen again, right? So anytime anybody asks you to tell them about a mistake you've made, they're giving you the opportunity to tell you how you've learned from the mistake and how you've grown from the mistake. And most importantly, how they're going to benefit from you learning and growing from that mistake. So that's what needs to be answered in this question. And when you do that, wow, you're giving them insight into what kind of individual you are. You're a problem solver. You take responsibility for yourself. You're accountable for your actions. And on top of that, you really try to turn things around when you do make a mistake. All qualities that are extremely attractive in somebody, especially post-crisis. And then finally, question number 5, they're going to ask you, tell me about a time where you had to work with a difficult person. So this is pretty important, folks, because post-crisis, we need harmony. We need teamwork. And there are going to be times where you're going to have differing opinions. You'll be working with people that don't see the way you do, or they don't have the same communication style as you, or they don't want to approach the task the same way as you. They have a different way of working, whatever it is. And so employers need to know that you're very good at handling those sorts of things, that you really can adapt and work with a challenging person. So it's important that you think about a time where you dealt with somebody, but once again, the story has a happy ending in the sense that you were able to figure out who they were and accept that, okay, they're different than me, and they're different from me in this way, in this way, in this way. Not worse, not better. I'm not better than they are. They're not better than I am. We're just different. And when I recognized that, it enabled me, it empowered me to start to look at the situation differently so that we could come to a resolution. And here's what I came up with, and here's how we were able to work things through, even though we're very different people. That is the question they're looking for right now. Because after a crisis, we need people to roll up their sleeves, really work side by side, and be able to execute together. And if you aren't capable of doing that, you are not going to be a good fit for an organization, especially post-crisis. They're going to really want to hear you give a good example around that so that you can show, hey, I truly am a team player and I can work on diverse teams and I'm very comfortable doing so. All right. So really important questions. Obviously, there are a lot more. These 5 are just 5 of 18 questions, common behavioral questions that you will get asked in a job interview. And again, we have a free PDF that lists all 18 questions and how to answer them. You can go over there and download that. But this session was to talk about these 5 in particular. And it's these 5 questions that how you answer them, the stories that you tell, and how you make sure that you convey that right persona, that professional presence is going to make all the difference. So do your homework, folks. Don't skimp. Now's the time to prepare. With that in mind, I want to give you one final thing. Answering questions correctly in an interview is 70% of the equation. 70% of the process of you getting the job is going to involve answering the questions correctly, which is why we focused on this today. But the other 30% is about asking the right questions. So I want you to come back and join me on Thursday, because I'm going to be talking on our show. Our show is Tuesdays and Thursdays at 2 p.m. Eastern. On Thursday this week, I'm going to do the follow-up companion piece to this on the questions you should be asking in an interview in order to set yourself off, particularly post-crisis. Now, these questions are very different. They're not the typical questions that we would have you ask in an interview. So I hope you come back and watch that session. In fact, I was already coaching some people inside Work It Daily today. I have a client who is got an interview early Thursday, and she said, I can't wait that long. You need to give me the answers early. So I did. But I want you to come back and really hear about these 3 questions and why it's important you ask them so that you can make sure that you stand out. And again, show all of those traits that I talked about. These questions are going to show just how intelligent you are in times of crisis, and it's going to make you a lot more attractive. So I hope you come back for that. All right. So now it's time to answer some questions around this. Interview prep, questions to ask in an interview, questions you'll get asked in an interview and the right way to answer them. I am going to take some of your questions live now. So let's get ready for that. Let's see. So the first question we have today is, how do we take these steps and apply them to a phone interview? Fantastic question. When you're on a phone interview, all you're really losing is eye contact and facial expressions and hand gestures, which doesn't seem like a lot, but it's actually a ton. It's actually a lot. So what happens is you have to be even better at your voice tone. They call it your voice professional presence. So you have to have the right speed and the right tone, how you go up and down. So if you are somebody who tends to talk really, really fast at a high tone and you get really excited and you never come up for air and it's always the same tone, that's going to be a problem. On the flip side, if you are somebody who talks slower and needs to think about it and is struggling, that's not going to work for you either. See what I mean? And we all have weaknesses with our styles. In fact, if you've never taken our communication style quiz, it's really important you do. We know there's the commander, the contemplator, the empathizer, the energizer. Really quick, commanders tend to be super curt and intense on a phone, and they don't sound very warm and friendly. Energizers sound really excited and hyper on the phone, and they go too fast, and they sound really overwhelming. Empathizers are all about how you're feeling and just want to make sure that everyone is so happy and feeling safe and loved. Contemplators, yes, I do want this job, and are far more serious and don't seem to have any enthusiasm. So I just gave you the 4 extremes. Now, I don't think any of you are going to be that particular way, but you need to understand that if you don't think about your tone and get it at the right pace and level, you're going to come across as extreme to other people who have a different style than you. So the other part of a phone interview is listening to the person on the other end and getting a sense of their style. Are they talking faster? Well, then they would be comfortable with you talking faster. Are they talking slower? Well, then they'd like you to slow down. That sort of thing. Do they have a lot of energy in their voice? Well, then they'd like to hear more energy in your voice. Do they seem more calm? Well, then they'd feel more comfortable with you being more calm. So you first need to know your own style. You second need to think about how to adjust it accordingly. And you third need to know how to read other people on the phone so that you can adjust. Not as easy as it sounds, but I will tell you with practice, you can get much better at this. All right, question from Ernest. He says, so you're saying it's best to go to the company's website to find what job openings they have. I am. And that was never the case, Ernest. It was usually easier to go to some of the other sites. But right now you need to go to the company websites because that's where they will be. That's where they will post their full-time jobs. Again, folks, in the very near future, I'm going to be doing some stuff on the hidden job market because it's going to become a big topic of conversation. One aspect will be if a company has a full-time job, it'll go up on their company page because they want only passionate followers of them and fans to find it. And also it's the easiest way for their internal employees to recommend people to the site. But the other big trend will be temporary staffing. So companies won't hire a lot of full-time positions. Most companies, if not all, will contract in some way as a result of this crisis, and they won't immediately go back to the same size. So they'll stay small for a while until they're sure they're profitable and they're sure they can grow the business again. At which point in time, they won't dive right back into hiring full-time employees. They will hire temporary employees. They'll go to a temporary agency or a staffing company, as it's called, and they'll work with those people. Now, when you work for a staffing company, you are a W-2 employee. You're an employee of the company, and they deploy you to another company's site. So that if the contract ends, you can then collect unemployment from the staffing agency because you were their employee. You weren't the company that you worked at's employee. See the difference? But a lot of companies like to use staffing agencies first because they don't want the risk. And then after a few months, if they say, wow, this person really worked out, clearly we're going to need them long term, they offer you a full-time position and you go what's called contract to hire or temp to perm. So any of you that are not involved with a staffing agency right now, you should be. You should find the local staffing agency that works in your skill set because they have all different types. And you want to register with them and get to know them so that when opportunities start to pop up, again, this is the hidden job market, these staffing agencies get the opportunities first because the companies don't want to deal with getting inundated with applicants for their jobs. They just want to go to the agency and say, find me the right couple of candidates. I'll put them in on a temporary basis. And if it works out, I'll hire them. That's a more efficient way to do business. So again, company websites and staffing agencies will be where we'll first start to see the hidden job market. Nazimo is asking, how do you handle the why you are looking for a new job question if you are applying for an opportunity inside the same company? Well, that's a wonderful question. What I would hope is that you have a very clear career game plan. So you know exactly what skills you're looking to build and become more valuable. And that's how you want to create value for employers in the future. And this particular job is going to give you more of an opportunity to do that than the one that you're in. So you're going to say, great question. I love the organization. Obviously, I want to stay in the organization. With that said, I am focused on building my skill sets in these 3 areas. I want to become more valuable to the organization by being able to do, this kind of work at this level. And that's not possible in the position I'm in, but it is possible in this position, which is why I'm looking to transfer. Right? You have to have a very logical reason, a clear game plan, and a compelling answer. Karen asks, for the mistake question, should this be a recent mistake or can it be a while back as long as it's transformative? Ooh, good question, Karen. I prefer the transformative one. I don't want a recent mistake if it's light and it's not really a big mistake. I want something meaty. I want something that you say, this changed me forever as a professional, and here's how it made me so much stronger and so much more valuable to my future employers. So go for the good one. Go for the transformative one. Ivana says, I have an interview next week in an assessment center, not group or individual. Can you give me any advice? I prepare very well, used all the advice from Worky Daily. Good. But I'm scared of the role-playing part. Job is for a store manager in a big company. Oh, that's great. Oh, role-playing can always feel a little distracting. My advice before this is to role-play like crazy. So what you want to do is just make like flashcards and give them to somebody in your family and say, ask me this question and let me just go. Right. And you don't need the person that's asking the questions necessarily to know the right answers or responses for you. What you need to do is have to, on the fly, keep talking off the cuff, keep talking and answering. Because the more you do that, the more relaxed you'll get. So that when you go on the actual interview, you'll be at the point like, gosh, I've done this so many times. I'm so sick of doing it. By the time I get to this thing, I'll be like, good, let's get it over with. I find that when you prepare like that, so you're literally like ad nauseum, I can't do it anymore. When you get there, you're relaxed because there's nothing to be surprised about. You're tired of it. You just want to do it. So you're almost like excited, like bring it on. Let's get this thing done. And that really comes through in the interview. So that's the simple answer there. You got to practice as much as possible. Amy says, I got 10 in-person interviews in the last 6 months and no job offer yet. What am I lacking with? Oh, wow. That's a really, really hard question to answer, Amy. First of all, you're obviously doing something right in the front end to get the in-person interviews. So congratulations to you. Right? That's hard to do. The question becomes, it's hard to get feedback after you've been on an interview to find out why they didn't choose you. And so, if a company is forthcoming with that feedback, it's really great. I will tell you this, if they're very specific and respond to you with, oh, you're overqualified, if multiple people gave you that response, then there's actually something going on in your interview where you're coming across intellectually superior. So you're giving off, unbeknownst to you, an attitude of intellectual superiority, which is translating into she's going to be difficult to work with because she's a know-it-all and it's not going to be easy to change. And I don't think that's the case with you at all. I'm just sharing with you that if you think about it, if you've made it through the interview process, like all the way to get to the interview, obviously they haven't thought you're overqualified yet. They've seen your resume, your LinkedIn profile, maybe had a phone screen with you. Then you get the interview and their answer is you're overqualified all of a sudden. Well, that says that something you did in the interview is off. That gave off the vibe of intellectual superiority. It probably gave off the vibe that you didn't have a lot of humility, that you didn't have resonance. You didn't understand like how the other people in the room were feeling. You didn't put it in their perspective. Something along the lines missed the mark and came across too strong and worked against you. So you have to think about that. It's usually the humility factor, I'll be honest with you. But that's the one piece of advice, not knowing your situation. If you're being told after you get through that you're overqualified, and it has to do with how you presented in the interview, and you're going to want to work on that humility factor. Lynn says, I had an interview 2 weeks ago. When and how do I follow up on whether they made a decision or yet? Well, we usually tell you wait 1 business week, Lynn. So the fact that it's been 2 weeks means it's totally appropriate. And we also always say never check in on a Monday. When people are coming off the weekend, they're always struggling to get back in the groove. So you never want to inquire about a job on a Monday. But hey, today's Tuesday. So what you should do is reach out today and say, I'm checking in to see if there's anything else I can do to further my candidacy. I would love the opportunity to work for you. That's it. Just say, I'm checking in to see if there's anything else I can do to further my candidacy. I would love the opportunity to work with you, period. Right? Make sure you don't say, that word, I'm just checking in. It's basically, like backhand to them saying, you didn't follow up with me. You didn't do your job. You fell down. You didn't inform me. So make sure you don't use that. Just say, I'm checking in to see if there's anything else I can do to further my candidacy. Okay. Really important to keep it simple. Don't try to sell yourself. That's all you're doing. Azalea says, during a phone interview, how can a recent grad translate learned educational skills or job skills for the next role? For example, MS project, managing projects, etc. Can we offer to send a portfolio? Probably not, Azalea, to be honest with you. If you're a recent grad, most companies aren't thinking your portfolio has any depth, and they're not going to want to waste a lot of time looking at it. They're going to ask you questions that help them understand whether or not you get what they're talking about. My advice to you is to work on your interview prep skills and make sure that you're telling really detailed stories that follow that experience to learn and grow model. So you need to be able to say, here's what happened. Here's what we accomplished. Here's how I did it. Here's what I learned from it. Also helps that you quantify. If you can quantify your experience and your accomplishments and talk about the size and scope of the project, that shows them you really understand the work and that you understand how you add value. So for me, it's not about portfolios. It's about how you answer the questions in a more detailed way. Most recent grads have no idea how to answer any questions with depth because they say, well, I don't have any experience. So how am I going to answer these questions? Well, you got to dig deep. You got to work with a coach and you got to pull out stories from your past, whether it's in high school or college or whatever. And you need to be able to show them that you understand what they're asking by giving exact examples and showing details. And when you do that, you really stand out as somebody who gets it. And that's super important. All right. Again, I just want to remind everybody as we continue along here, lots of questions about preparing for interviews. Please go grab our free resource. It's in the link. It's the 18 interview questions, behavioral questions that you're going to get asked in interviews. You want to prepare yourself. No excuses. It is going to be the most competitive time ever to look for work. Lots of people will be interviewing. You need to stand out. So go grab that free resource and it will really help you with a lot of the things that I'm answering here today. All right, back to Brisbane Boy 86. Well, that's a great name. I am currently furloughed and have been doing some more freelance, my side hustle, and I've been asked to get a reference letter from a previous employer, but it feels really insensitive now. That's interesting. So first of all, if you got furloughed from an employer, obviously they're going to want to be able to give you a reference letter. So I think that that's great. Even if you're doing more freelance or contract work, it's a small world and employers are going to want to do reference checks on you. A lot of times they're going to want to call back and find out your dates of employment and validate your pay rates because they want to know that you're telling the truth. So never lie about those things in an interview because they can easily call up and find out when you started, when you left, what your starting pay was, what your end pay was. And if you lie about any of that, your history. So at the very least, you're going to need to have that ready. But I would go back and ask your manager if they would be willing to write a public recommendation for you on LinkedIn that could be translated into a reference letter. It's always good to have those and network. And even if it's been a while, hey, it's a small world and you never know where you might work with these people again. You never know down the line if the manager is now a manager someplace else that you'd like to work with. So you have to nurture relationships, even if it hurts, even if you got furloughed or you got laid off. You need to go back and nurture those relationships so that you can get those references when you need them. All right. But I would definitely do it. Darlene says, I get a weekly email from LinkedIn that I appear in 35 searches and 50 appearances, yet I don't get calls or emails regarding these LinkedIn positions. Why does this happen? That's very interesting. So when you show up in search results, it means that anybody, not just recruiters, Darlene, anybody is searching for a name or a skill set or a company. And you're showing up in their search results because you matched the closest to what they're searching for. So don't assume that those 35 and 50 are all recruiters that are not choosing you for a job. A lot of times it's other people who are job searching and looking for people who work at the companies you used to work at in the skill sets that you used to have. So that's why those numbers aren't accurate. And I don't tell people to really take them into consideration. They're not, the thing is you don't need 35 searches. You just need the right one person to see you and want to contact you. So it's more important that you focus on optimizing your LinkedIn profile and being active on LinkedIn so that you attract the right recruiters. And there's a whole keyword optimization and profile optimization process that you need to go through to do that. But even if you do that, like even if you went through our LinkedIn profile review that we have, which by the way, I don't know if people know that, but we're a subscription service. So we're a career coaching service. You join us for a really low monthly fee. It's less than what you spend on coffee. It's less than what you spend on your gym membership. And you work with our career coaches online or on the phone, right? So it's having a career coach in your back pocket. But sometimes people just want to come to us and say, look at my LinkedIn profile, look at my resume, look at my cover letter, tell me what's wrong with it and how to fix it, right? So if you've never had your profile ever reviewed, you really should do that right now, folks, because you need to understand how that works. And if you want more on that, I know my team will pop a link in for you. We have both a professional level and an executive level process where you do that. And it includes a month in our program. So you get a month to see what it's like. But anyways, you go through this LinkedIn profile and it's optimized. I'm not going to tell you, you're going to show up in more search results, but it's not all going to be people that you want to work with. And it just doesn't matter. Our goal isn't to get you more search results. It's to get more of the right type of people. So I would rather see it go down, but have the right people look at it, then go up and have all these people that mean nothing look at it, if that makes sense. So there's a whole science to that you need to work through. So don't get hung up on that. If anything, the fact that you're not getting any calls tells me that you need to do more research at the opportunities that these companies have and the keywords and how you're presenting your data on LinkedIn to be a tighter match. That would be something that I would be working backwards with you on in order to make that happen. Emma says, how does a recent college grad get an entry-level job when all of them require at least 1 year experience? How do we deal with age discrimination for being young? That's a great question, Emma. So the reason they ask for 1 year experience is that nobody wants to train a college student who's never done any kind of professional work. So hopefully you've had some kind of internship that you've done that can count towards that experience. Maybe 2 internships. They're not looking necessarily for 1 full year of experience. They're just looking for proof that you've worked in a professional setting, hopefully a setting similar to theirs. So if you've got that experience, you're going to want to put that front and center. But here's the thing. If you don't have that, then you are going to have to leverage what's called a disruptive cover letter. A disruptive cover letter simply means a cover letter that smacks them between the eyeballs and gets them to wake up and say, who is this recent grad? This is a heck of a story. So a disruptive cover letter isn't about why you think you're the perfect person for the job and all the things that you studied in school. It's the story of how you learned what this company does is amazing. If you're here for the beginning part of this broadcast, I talked about your intrinsic or what's called internal motivation for work. You need to tell them an awesome story about the fact that even though you have no experience, you are in love with them as an employer, or you are in love with the kind of work that you would be doing. And you need to tell me the story why. And it needs to be compelling and convincing because I need to know that that is the story that's driving you to want to do this work. And if you tell me that, what you lack in experience, you are making up for in enthusiasm, you are holding my attention, and I am going to want to talk to this young person that told me such a compelling story. So disruptive cover letters are the secret sauce. If you are a recent grad right now or you're about to graduate, learn about disruptive cover letters. We actually have a free YouTube video, and we also have an awesome free resource on writing cover letters over at Work It Daily, which I know the team will pop the link in. You need to write a disruptive cover letter to get their attention. That is how you stand out. And candidly, your upside is you have no bad habits, right? Like workers who have experience, and you're eager to learn. So there's lots of upside to hiring you, but you've got to give them that connection so they say, okay, this person's trainable. The enthusiasm, the energy, the passion for who we are and what we do is there. We can teach this person pretty quickly, even though they're a recent grad. Okay, so you've got to do it. Joe says, what's the best way to explain competing job offers? Wow. If you are lucky enough to have a competing job offer right now, which simply means two jobs at the same time, that's pretty rare and awesome. And what you need to do is write out both jobs and look at the pros and cons of each one and evaluate them in terms of which one matches your must-haves, nice to have, and don't wants the most. So that's the first thing that you need to do. Then once you've done that, look at the one that wins and say, if I take all that away, which of the 2 jobs am I emotionally connected to? Because you have to make sure that you also are drawn to the company that's making the offer. So what I'm telling you is that a lot of times the better offer is coming from the company that you're not as excited about. And the lesser offer is coming from the one that you are in love with. If that's the case, then you go, once you have both in writing, by the way, never pit companies against each other unless you have both job offers in writing. You would go to the one that you love more and say, this is really hard for me. Here's the situation. I have another job. It's a better offer, but I love your company. You're the company I want to work for. Is there any way you can match this offer? Is there any way you can help me get there because you're the one I really want to work for? So that's how you're able to present that to them. You go to the one that you're most in love with that isn't hitting it. And then if they can meet those needs or make promises to you that says, hey, we'll get you there in 6 months or whatever the case is, you can take that job and know that you're going to get what you wanted. If they can't, if they say, no, I can't, then you have to step back and ask yourself, can I take the job with the company I don't like as much, but it has better options? And then you make the decision from there. You go. But you can't pit one against the other and back and forth. You'll lose both opportunities. You have to inventory, decide, and then go to the one. If you really, really like it better, but they didn't offer as much, then you want to go to them and say that and see if you can get it matched. Okay. Laura says, how do I follow up with a company who hasn't returned a promised follow-up about their solicitation for applications when they indicated it would be within 48 hours? Well, I'd be super forgiving right now, Laura, of any company that it's been more than 48 hours. There's just an overwhelming amount of applicants for everything right now, and people are stressed. So, if they said 48 hours and it's been just 48 hours, let it go. I would wait a full week. I'll be honest with you, right? 48 hours is 2 days, 2 business days too. So please don't include weekends into that mix at all. That doesn't count. If they said 48 hours, they meant 2 business days. So if you submit it on a Friday, then, you really shouldn't be expecting, you should be expecting something by like end of business today, a Tuesday, right? And then even then I would give it a couple more days, Wednesday, Thursday, and check in with them on a Friday. So, if they say 48 hours, it's 2 business days, give them 5 full business days, and then touch base. But it's really hard right now. And I'll tell you, people that call companies out right now when they're stressed will lose out. They will be blacklisted. It is a problem for sure. So you've just got to be patient with people and understand it's very extenuating circumstances. All right. Wow. This session went really fast today. What a great set of questions. Look, folks, if you've learned anything today, it's that no excuses. You have got to do interview prep right now, specifically around how you're going to answer questions post-crisis, those open-ended behavioral questions that are assessing all of your key skill sets that are part of your professional presence. So please, if you didn't get to attend the whole thing, go back, watch the beginning of this. We talk a lot around the psyche around that. The recording will be live in a little bit. It's so important. I cannot stress it enough. You do not want to waste out the opportunity. You finally get an interview and you blow it because you don't have your questions landing correctly. So please do the work. You will thank me for it later, I hope. Awesome. Listen, I want to thank all of you, actually. I feel so lucky. All of us at Work It Daily are so happy to be here broadcasting live with you 2 days a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays at 2 p.m. It's you coming and asking these powerful questions. There are no silly questions. These questions you're asking, other people are asking too, and you are giving that a voice, and you are paying it forward every time you come here and you ask your questions and help other people. So thank you. This means nothing, and it would be nothing if you weren't all here, and I'm truly grateful for that. Of course, you know where to find us. If you want to work with us and get your resume, cover letter, and LinkedIn profile reviewed, we now have that service. It won't be forever. It's a service we're offering in addition to our subscription service because a lot of people have requested it. So be sure to check that out. Otherwise, go work on your interview prep. Go crush it. And remember what we always tell you. Until next time, if you want to win, you've got to work it daily.